Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne here with you on this Wednesday morning, man. We got a great lineup for us today. Dudley Dawson's going to be on with us here in the 8:30 segment. Mitch Davis and the MitchDavisShow.com. And Norman Jetmundsen's going to join us here shortly after 8. So kind of juggling things around. Normally, Dudley's on Wednesdays at 8, and absolutely solid gold when he is on talking about the Razorbacks in college football. And in the next segment, we'll have George Plaster on sports up in Nashville, covers the SEC, just one of the best around up there. Olin Buchanan, Texags.com, checks in with us from, College Station. He's from White Oak, Texas. I always like to say this. You got to love it. A town of 2,500 people with a stadium that holds 5,000. And, like I said, man, it's a lot of fun, man. We got a bunch going on today. Aggie fans are excited. I'm getting some chatter right now from them about, hey man, they're counting the days till they play Alabama. So look, is the SEC down? Hell, I don't know. I know one thing. There are not a lot of elite quarterbacks in this league, and that makes it a great opportunity for every school in the league. It's like Yancey Porter said, it is going to be so much fun this season. Who was it? Eugene Asante, Auburn linebacker, said, in chaos comes opportunity. The deep thinker, Rodan. Rodan is the new nickname I have for Auburn linebacker Eugene Asante. Also want to say, got back over here. We're at the Cherry Farm today, in Memphis, Cherry Farm, back and forth. Got back from Orange Beach. The yard, the 5 acres, we all share in the pleasure of cutting it. But Michael Jordan and David Baker should apply for jobs as head groundskeepers at Augusta National. It looks so good, you could eat off of it. Good God. And the mosquitoes are leaving the area because they're cutting rice. That's the first thing they cut over here. Man, but those mosquitoes, while we were gone, I heard they were knocking on the door going, where are Rob and Audrey? Man, they have been brutal this summer. But, hey, send us your questions and comments during the show. We are happy to have you. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. The First Amendment, free speech, is ardently revered and respected on Sidelines. We don't hold back. You ask us a question, we're going to tell you. We don't have somebody looking over our shoulder saying, well, you got to take this opinion or that opinion. We have free speech. Join Club 250, grassroots popular support. We have great sponsors, but we need grassroots support. Keep this show on. We are growing. We are growing. We are blessed, again, to have great listeners. 25 shows a month. Do the math. Times 12, Gazenda. That's 300-plus shows a year. I want to say something, too, real quick before I bring Mitch on here about our great sponsors. Folks like the May Veterinary Clinic in Tuscaloosa and Northport. 2 locations, Wayne May, Dr. Wayne May, DVM, opened the clinic in 1964. 60 years they're coming up, folks. Tuscaloosa and Northport, the best veterinary medicine care you'll get anywhere. My friend Johnny Weekly went in there last week. I believe Friday was in Tuscaloosa. He's got 3 kids now at Alabama. Holy cow, Johnny. Took his dog to get some stitches taken out. Said, what's your vet friend's name down there? I said, Dr. Waller May, DVM. He said, that guy was awesome. Took care of it at a fair price. He goes, I'll be trading with him. I'm going to bring every critter I got to Dr. May, the May Veterinary Clinic. And also Rumble Boxing Gym, 1835 Union Avenue in Midtown Memphis, corner of Union and McLean. Brand new facility, all the equipment, everything you need there. The soft gloves, they've got the big gloves. They've got your gear, everything that you need. When you go in there, these are workouts, 15 3-minute sessions, 45 minutes long. That's as long as a prize fight is. And I'm going to tell you what, you will get a great workout. Jumping jacks, burpees, push-ups, dips, planks, then the dumbbell work. Then you hit those bags. 48 people in those classes with great instructors. You will love it. Check them out on our website, rumbleboxinggym.com. To our listeners all over the country, and Nigel pointed out, always remember all of our people in the armed forces all over the world because of the interwebs, as Al Gore called it. We got a lot of international listeners. So I want to say to you, thanks for standing guard, keeping us free. And folks, if you are ever traveling and you run into some of our servicemen and women, buy them the first and the second and the third round of drinks. Do that. Make sure they're not driving, of course. But Mitch Davis is here right now. Speaking of great philosophers and orators and lyricists, lyricists, I like that word. Sounds like a lozenge here that I'm about to take from my cough. But anyway, Mitch, how in the world are you? And are you as fired up as I am? God, I love this stuff. This is college football, basketball, it's all coming together. And we're going to bring Norman Jetmundsen in here in a second, who, along with David Cruz, spent 6 years. I'm on a roll, man. One sip of coffee does this to me. Suwanee 1899. That is, to me, should be required viewing for every freshman class in college football in these here United States. Because once you understand how powerful that story is and you watch it, you will watch it again and again and again. And the damn thing you can do about it except hit rewind and watch it again and again and again. I sound like Pat Dye. I'm going to bring Norman in here with us right now. How is everybody this morning?
Good morning. Great to be on, Rob. How are you?
You're doing great, man. And look, Mitch, you know, I told you that Norman would be on here. This is a lot of fun. I am fired up about college football. I want to get your thoughts, Mitch, on where we are right now. And then you and me and Norman are going to bounce it around. But look, we counted the days down. I was at Orange Beach. Everybody on the beach is talking college football. There is a great revival of the sport.
You know, Rob, and it's always good to come on with you. And it's a big weekend down here in Mississippi. As Ole Miss hosts Georgia Tech on Saturday, and then the big one is LSU and Mississippi State, which I'll be at in Starkville for the third straight week. And you know, Rob, I've seen a lot of tweets. I've seen a lot of posts out there about saying that, you know, this week is a dead week of college football. This week is kind of a boring week. I don't know about y'all. We got Florida, Tennessee. We got LSU, Mississippi State, Arkansas, BYU. I mean, that's a hell of a lineup right there. I'm always excited to go to a game, and it's been a real honor and a real treat to start to get to know Zach Arnett a little bit more and spend some time with the Mississippi State Bulldogs. I mean, I was telling my wife yesterday, you know, her father graduated from Mississippi State, and as a graduate of Mississippi State, I said, you know, there's something about this Mississippi State team. I don't know what it is yet because we're only through week 2, but there's something about this Bulldogs football team that feels different, that feels like, you know, they might not win the SEC West, they might not make it to Atlanta, but this is a team that loves each other, that their coach really cares. And when we saw Zach Arnett, he's a football dude. He dropped an F-bomb on live TV, which everybody's kind of up in arms about, why did he do that? I thought it was funny. I thought it was very par on course for Zach Arnett because he's a good dude. He's a football dude. A lot of excitement. And I'm just so excited to be around this team. And Rob, I'm excited to go to Auburn on October 28th to go see my boy, Coach Freeze, but also go see Mississippi State and cover Mississippi State and be around the program. So it's always fun, and I love talking college football. And like I said, the sport is not dead. We might be having a down year in the Southeastern Conference, and that's, you know, neither here or there. But this sport, if you look across the landscape of college football, we're seeing Coach Prime and Deion Sanders, a Mississippi native, do what he's doing at Colorado. And that is so good for the sport. It's so good for the African-American community right now. I mean, what Deion is doing at Colorado is really just an awesome thing. And I'm really hoping that sooner or later the paths cross and I get to cover Deion again. I got to cover him at Jackson State and would love to cover him again at Colorado because I'm a big primetime, big Deion Sanders fan, and I love what he's doing for the sport right now.
Well, I know one thing, and Norman, I think you would agree, he's getting a lot of eyeballs on college football, and he's different, Norman, than the other coaches. When people ask him a question, you don't just go into the question. He'll go, hey, how you doing? He actually, and he'll say, hey, how's your foot doing? I saw you're wearing the boot. And he goes, I mean, that is different. I was mad at Deion, but the more I watch it, I'm looking at all the people in Colorado that love football. And I'm going to tell you, Norman, I can't say it enough. What you and David Cruz did, you spent over 6 years on this documentary. It was released, I believe, April 27th of 2022 in Birmingham, Monday Morning Birmingham Quarterback Club, which you're a member of. And Mitch, I don't know how familiar you are with the Monday Morning Birmingham Quarterback Club. There ain't a civic group in America much less the world, that is so devoted to helping Children's Hospital of Alabama and a number of other great causes. But Norman, your documentary, honestly, it should be required viewing from the first couple of days, not just the freshmen, but the whole team to watch it, because it is a celebration of college football. It is going to go down as a classic, like on Christmas Eve, watching Miracle on 34th Street, Christmas in Connecticut, or It's a Wonderful Life. It's that powerful a documentary. Let's talk about it and your thoughts on college football, because we've been through some rough times before. 1899 was one of those rough patches, and you made it.
Yeah, thank you. And Mitch, let me say, you omitted another important Mississippi football game this weekend. Millsaps is traveling to the oldest football field in the South to play Suwanee this Saturday, and that'll be a big matchup. And it'll be particularly interesting because my good friend Rob Perigin, who for the last 13 years has been the president of Millsaps, is the new vice chancellor at Suwanee. So he'll be at the game, and he'll have to now root for Suwanee after rooting for Millsaps the past 13 years.
I love it.
I appreciate Rob so much. As I've told you before, we dug into this film. I had no idea what we were going to get into in terms of the depth of the story, the personalities, and it talks about the early development of football, how it came about. And you've got to know our story to know 2023 football, because they're all interrelated.
Yeah. Norman, in covering college football, and you all got Johnny Majors before he died, Bobby Bowden. You got so many, Vince Dooley. You spent 6 years doing this. You look at college football, and there's a point in there in the movie when Tony Barnhart's talking about in 1906. I don't know, was it in your documentary? 19 football players died. This was a crazy time in America, and everybody thinks now with conference realignment, oh my God, the sport's ruined. Go back 100 years ago, the Southern Conference had 23 schools in it. 10 years later, 10 of them went and formed the SEC, Suwanee being one of them, or 13 of them went and formed the SEC. And Suwanee can get back anytime they want to.
That's right. I don't think that'll happen.
Yeah. But what in my, like when the documentary, let's talk about the national exposure that you're getting, because I know it was on public TV. It's coming on public TV all in Memphis, all over the South, but now it's going nationwide. How'd that happen? That doesn't happen with luck.
That's right. We're very lucky because Mike McKenzie and Phil Hutchison at Alabama Public Television here came to the premiere event you mentioned in Birmingham by the Quarterback Club. They came to me after that and said, we love that, we want to show it. And so they were the first public television to show it. And then they sponsored us into the NETA, the National Organization for Public Televisions, and we started getting exposure. Then we hired a fabulous firm out of North Carolina called Artemis. They went to work this summer, and we are now, we got a map the other day. We've been shown in some part of 48 of the 50 states, only Hawaii and Rhode Island. But what we're most excited about is this Saturday night. It'll be at 7 o'clock Central Time on the World Channel. And the World Channel is an offshoot of public television. You can look it up, worldchannel.org. And we're going to be shown nationwide this Saturday night, 7 p.m. Central Time. You got to check your time zone. Yeah. But we're extremely excited about that event.
Oh, it is going to be. And Mitch, you think about back in the fall of 2019, the 150th anniversary of college football, which began November 6th, 1869, Rutgers 6, Princeton 4 in 12 innings. I'm not sure who was in the bullpen, but that was 25 guys on each side. Mitch, you're a young guy. Norman and I are obviously older than you, but the history of college football, the traditions, the heroes, you get that, don't you?
Yeah, and you know, that's one thing I really appreciate y'all's work. What y'all did with that documentary was fantastic. Rob sent it to me, and I watched it, and I've watched it 3 times now, and even made my wife, who is, now getting into college football since we've been together the last 6 years. And her dad went to Mississippi State. And so she always understood football, but she was never enriched in it like I am. And, it's just such a great documentary. And really, Rob and I talked about this on my podcast last week. The history of college football is so important to teach the younger generations. I can remember my dad, who grew up a diehard Kentucky fan from Louisville, Kentucky, teaching me about Kaywood Letford calling Kentucky games. And of course, I learned about Larry Munson. I grew up in Memphis, so John Ward was another guy that I listened to. And of course, Jack Crystal. Jack Crystal is by far, him and Larry Munson are my two favorite radio broadcasters. Without a question, without a doubt, love Jack Crystal. It was those guys that paved the way to tell the stories for guys like me. When I've shared this multiple times on Rob's show, and whenever I meet somebody new out on the road, I tell them the same thing. They ask me, why have you gotten into this? Why did you get into this? This is a side hustle for me. I work full time in finances and love that. It's a great job. But this is my opportunity to tell those stories of the Southeastern Conference, and tell the stories of what's happening today in the Southeastern Conference, but also, really honor the past. I had the great privilege and the great honor of having Vince Dooley on my podcast. To my knowledge, according to his family, I was the last podcast interview that Coach Vince Dooley ever did before he passed away, and it was just such an honor. Of course, I've interviewed so many other great radio guys and coaches, and I just think it's so important to remember the past and really honor the past, because that's what connects us across generations, to generation, is honoring the past. I can tell you stories of growing up. My first Kentucky football game, I was 3 months old. I was born in August. My dad took me in October. We went and saw Kentucky and Arkansas play in Little Rocket War Memorial, and of course, I don't remember the game. I was so young, but there are pictures of me in a number 99 Kentucky football offensive line unit jersey, because I was such a big boy, and my dream was always to play football in the SEC, but was never the most athletic. I'm a short, little stumpy dude, so decided to go into journalism and telling the stories and having the podcast, and I've been very blessed. And this year I finally kind of broke through and moved down to Mississippi, and I got to cover, the SEC men's basketball tournament, and that was just such an honor. It was cool. My dad was up there with me, and he was taking pictures of me out on the court, like every proud father would do. And Rob was texting me, and got to interview Paul Feinbaum, and I love college football, love college athletics, but I love our conference. Our conference, the SEC. Yes, I grew up a Kentucky fan, and now that I'm married in Mississippi State, I'm maroon and white. Hail State, ringing the cowbell, let's roll. But I love the SEC. I love our conference, and I love the history, and that's why it's so important to honor that Suwanee team who did the unimaginable. I mean, if you imagine playing, was it 5 games and however
6
many days it was?
Yeah.
And programs nowadays can't even do that. They struggle. If they play on Saturday, they struggle going to play on Thursday because of the turnaround. So that's what's just so amazing. And I love truly honoring the history of our conference. And I say our conference, I know people will call me a homer, and that's fine.
That's okay.
I really don't care. I love, truly love, and Rob can probably attest to this. I truly love the Southeastern Conference. And, like I said, I grew up a Kentucky fan, and you're taught to hate Tennessee. Now that I've gotten older and been around the sport a little bit more, I have a new respect for the Vols and a new respect for what their fan base brings to the table. They might not always be the most enjoyable to be around as a Kentucky fan, but they bring so much to the table. And what y'all did with the work with the Suwanee documentary was it was awesome. It was truly a remarkable thing.
It is. And Norman, here's a comment from a viewer. And I love this. Keith Richards in Northport, Alabama. Alabama Public TV is where I watched 1899. Could not turn away from it. Very captivating. All need to watch it to see how football has evolved. And Norman, did you know all this? I mean, having gone to Suwanee, my great-great-grandfather was involved, Bishop Polk with Suwanee, and I've always known of a lot about Suwanee. It's a sacred place to me, growing up in the Episcopal Church, now Catholic, but man, I just how much what was a typical day doing this documentary and lining up these interviews, because you got the tip of the spear for college football.
Thank you. We at the time that David Cruz and I started this, we were both working full time, so this was something we did at nights, weekends, whenever we had a few minutes to do it. And some things started falling in place. You asked about the story. If you're a Suwanee student like I was, I think within the first hour you're on campus as a freshman, somebody says something about that team.
Okay.
Everybody knows of it. What we found out was nobody really knew the story. And that's why this film became so important to us and a labor of love, because the deep, and I've said this to several people, when we started, David and I said, well, it's 1899. There are no movies about the team. There's very little photographs. We're just going to have to explore the lore and kind of make that the topic. Well, when we dug into it, the facts were better than the lore. And incredible finding descendants of the team, finding old letters, finding old photographs, and pulling this story together that we had no idea was this rich. And then what we had not intended at the beginning was, we also realized that this team was right when football was developing at a rapid clip. The 1869 game you referenced is entirely different from what 1890 was like, and 1890 was entirely different than what 2023 is like. So it's an evolution in the game, and we were enthralled by that. And then, as y'all were just discussing, I had never really thought deeply about why is football so important in the South, and we explore that. And it makes perfect sense that the South had been defeated in the Civil War, devastated by Reconstruction, and football became a way that they could come back and claim glory in the field of play as opposed to the field of battle. So it was fascinating.
It is, and y'all really got into that about the Scotch-Irish, the Celtic culture in the South. I mean, which is what I am and what Mitch is and what, Norman, and that's Scandinavian there, but you're tough. But you think about, and I think you talked about how football was so attractive to the people in the South because it was tough, it was violent, it was fighting. But yeah, that 60-year period, the South had been emasculated. And really, when Suwanee, you all tapped into the nerve of football. And that, when you did these interviews, Tony Barnhart, I love him, Mr. College Football. We have him on the show a lot. And he just got an award from the Touchdown Club in Memphis, August 28th. He does so much for so many clubs and just loves the game. But talk about the day you spent over there in Dunwoody with Mr. College Football, because that was really cool.
It was fascinating because we didn't know Tony, but we knew about his book, Southern Fried Football, where he had named Suwanee the #1 team ever. So we knew we wanted to interview him. We contacted him. He was so gracious. He said, yeah, come over to my house. We'll do it. So we went over, did it in his house, in his study. He could not have been nicer. And of course, his knowledge of football was just astounding, encyclopedic knowledge. And just off the top of his head, he told us story after story after story. He knew it. He knew what he was talking about. But the main thing to me was how gracious he was. The same thing, we were in Vince Dooley's living room, could not have been nicer. I got to go to Bobby Bowden's living room and study and interview him. And those things are things I'll treasure my entire life, because they were so welcoming to me, who they didn't know me from Adam. And they were so welcoming and so important to our film.
It really is. Mitch?
And that's what's so neat about the sport is you get to meet so many just fantastic people. You see the guys on the sidelines, you grow up listening to the guys, and you think they're larger than life, and in a lot of cases they are. You know, look at for example, take Jack Crystal. Jack Crystal, I never had the opportunity to meet him, but everything I heard, he was a larger than life figure down here in Mississippi. But when people got to know Jack, he was such a genuine guy, just like John Ward, Kaywood Letford, and various other coaches and everything. And that's something I think that what makes not only our sport but also the SEC so unique. I mean, I had the distinct opportunity to interview Dale Browne, the former LSU basketball coach, the legendary Dale Browne, and had the opportunity to sit down with him and talk LSU basketball. And now he emails me once a week. Quite literally, Dale Browne emails me once a week, and he's found out that I was Kentucky and Mississippi State fan, so he now teases me. One of the emails he sent to me, he goes, make sure you share. He titled this, "Share this with your father," and it was his record against Kentucky, which is all-time winningest coach against. Which I thought was funny, but really, truthfully, that's what makes our conference. And I say conference, but I include Suwanee and the legendary Tulanes and all that into that conversation. Bill Curry, talked to Bill Curry not but 2 or 3 weeks ago, and Bill Curry, was talking about the same thing and about how the SEC. We are such a brotherhood because we all have relatives that fought in the Civil War, and some of us have more than others. And I look back on my family history, and my family, we were sharecroppers, we were dirt poor country Southern bumpkin farmers, and it was college football, it was working hard, getting through the Great Depression. That now it gives me and my cousins, my siblings, the opportunities that we have to go out and make a name for ourselves. And, I think that that's something that y'all's film and the Saturdays in the South, the
Oh,
SEC,
wow. Yeah.
those really told the story. And, when I have my own kids, and I'm going to teach my kids about the history of the SEC, because, when I go to a Kentucky game or go to a state game or whatever, I'm looking across the crowd and I see generations. I see people, Saturday night in Starkville, we had an 86, 87-year-old World War II. No, one of the
Korean. That would be Korean. Yeah.
Of that nature, veteran. And he was out there with his walker, and he got out to midfield. They were honoring him or whatever. And he's still active in the VEA. And he got out there, started ringing his cowbell. And, it's those moments that I think is so important to, remember the past, honor the past, but also embrace the future. I mean, we've got Texas and Oklahoma joining us, and they've got a lot of history, and I look forward to kind of deep diving in with their fan bases to learn about the history of Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah. Look, we're about out of time, and I'm going to tell you, Norman, tell people, and we got to do this more often. It just, when you tap into that past, man, you got to, when Bobby Louder was awarded the Lifetime Achievement Award from Auburn last year, a friend of mine who knows him well, Bobby loves Auburn. He said, I've never seen him emotional in my life except then. And he said, Bobby Louder said, we all love to drink from the well, but let's not forget those who dug the well. Norman, you are to be commended for what you and David. We got to get David Cruz on here. I feel like Hall and Oates, or Bo and Luke Duke. Who's the dark head guy? Tom Wopat. But the two. I want to get the two of y'all on here together because I'm fascinated with documentaries, and I'm getting text right now with ideas for more documentaries. Where are they now? Where is Bill Brother Oliver from Epps, Alabama, over in the Black Belt? Where is he now? You and your narrator, I want to get him on the show. Oh my goodness. But tell people how they can get a copy of the film, and then I'll let you go. We're going to have to take a break. We got Dudley Dawson coming up next, but this is so important that people watch this, because I think it will make them remember this is a game worth saving.
Thank you. You can look up the film at Suwanee1899.org, Suwanee1899.org. That's our website. You can find it on pbs.org and stream it. And can I make a shameless plug? This next fall, we'll have a book out about this team, which has a lot of information that we were not able to put in the film. So be on the lookout for that as well.
Yeah, it'll be a coffee table book that is coming out.
Coffee table book. And also, of course, this Saturday at 7 p.m. Central, look up your World Channel and watch it on the World Channel Saturday night.
Hey, we're absolutely going to. Norman, thank you so much down in Birmingham, Alabama. Absolutely love this documentary. And like I said, I've shared it with a lot of people, and they're like, oh, my gosh, you can't stop watching it. Mitch, tell them how they can keep up with you, and we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Yeah, themitchdavisshow.com, podcast, wherever you listen to your podcast, SoundCloud, Apple. The Mitch Davis Show. Rob's joining me at noon on Friday, and going to be live from Starkville, Mississippi on Saturday, hopefully to talk to Paul Feinbaum. We're texting back and forth trying to work out the scheduling of that. So y'all have a great weekend. Hail State, and let's get a good weekend of college football. Appreciate you guys.
We'll do it. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. Thanks so much, Norman and Mitch. Be right back.
Bye-bye.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Back here with you, Dudley Dawson out at that looks like Audubon Park in Memphis, possibly Pebble Beach, maybe, or could that be Sugarloaf Mountain? I'm not sure. I love that background. Dudley Dawson wearing the Cowboys. Hey, how about Mr. Pollard, the running back from Melrose High School in Memphis, Tony Pollard? Pretty darn good player. Another one of the Mike Norvell guys at Memphis. But I love that discussion talking about the history of college football. The more when you just study it and you go, wow, there's just new stories popping up all the time. I watched the Razorbacks play with Chris Saxon down in we were watching that Arkansas game and watching his nephew, Patrick Kudus. It's fun to watch someone who's got some skin in the game because every play he's like, God, he just got whipped on that one, or he just did a good job. But that Arkansas offensive line is big. They got the win 28-6. The defense is like your typical Travis Williams, Kevin Steele, aggressive, got a bunch of sacks, but a lot of pressure on the quarterback. But what were your takeaways from Arkansas 28, Kent State 6?
Well, I think when you look at the overall play, they're happy to be 2-0, but see a lot of things they can do better. One of those is that offensive lineman. I do think Patrick has done a good job. But overall, they haven't got the push that they wanted. Coach Pittman was clear in that Monday that he wanted to get into a situation where it was more of a north and south offensive line that was moving the ball better. He talked about the fits on the offensive line. He talked about, obviously they've had some injuries there and been moving some people around. He's got to find his best 5 to 7 guys that he can rotate in there and get going. Because obviously running the rushing part of Arkansas's football team has always been the big part of it. And it's something that they want to get going. And hopefully they want to get it going before BYU arrives here this weekend for really what should be their toughest game of the 3, without a doubt.
Yeah, the BYU game, again, you and I were talking about this, but I still think that's the most impressive victory Arkansas had last year. Going on the road to Provo, because I go back to, I always want to give credit where I hear it, but Chuck Oliver, Southern Sports Today, my friend over in Atlanta, talks about when you're playing against BYU, you're out there with a bunch of 19 and 20-year-olds banging heads with a bunch of other linemen that in a lot of cases are 23 and 24 and spent a couple of years on the mountain bike riding all over the world doing their Mormon mission. They're BYU's big, they're physical, and they like to fight. I mean, that's a tough team. What's different about BYU this year that has Arkansas most concerned?
Last year's Arkansas BYU game was really a pivot point for them, in that they were 3-3 going into that ball game, were able to get the win on the road, but I'm not sure a lot of people thought they would. Jaron Hall was their quarterback last year. He had a big day, as did KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders, who won't be playing again this weekend. The difference in this year's BYU team is they've switched quarterbacks. Keaton Slovis, who had been at USC for 3 years, at Pittsburgh last year. He's there this year. He's thrown for nearly 400 yards in these 2 games, like 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. They may not have as good a defense as they had last year, and that's interesting because they gave up 53 last year. But Arkansas, that was one of Arkansas's best offensive outputs. As I said, Rocket Sanders had 175 yards. KJ Jefferson threw for 5 touchdowns, and they were able to make some big plays in the special teams as well that were able to get them through there. It's a different dynamic, a different 2 rosters. There are 98, and you heard me right, 98 different players on the 2 rosters than there were last season that you can have, and so it's there's a lot of different people that are going to play in this game that weren't in last year's game.
Between the 2 teams, because I think Arkansas's got 42. And again,
38 is what they ended up with, and BYU has 60.
Wow. That's like Colorado with Coach Sanders. And this is really cool. I love to talk with you about the structure part of it, because I'm getting a lot of questions. And I said, what did Dudley say the last couple of years, especially last year? You said 1 through 44 Razorbacks roster, pretty solid. You'll give them a B+. It's 45 through 85. You mentioned right before the season, you've identified 60 players on the Arkansas roster you think could start. That is a significant increase in that roster. And I'm looking at the class Arkansas is putting together in high school recruiting now. They're doing it.
Yeah,
I think Arkansas fans, this is a really solid program Sam Pittman and these coaches are building.
Yeah, I do think so. Although it's like anything else, when you have expectations, you get excited about the people coming in. You want everything to be perfect, and that's what the fans and coaches and players have looked for these first 2 games. It hadn't been, but they are in a situation where you can continue to get better, and that's what you have to do every day. That sounds like coach speak, but it is the truth. If you take a day off and don't get better, it's your practice. The other team's getting better, and you're going to lose the battle there, even though you might not lose the war. The important thing for them is to continue to get healthy. Having Rocket Sanders out is a big deal. Don't know if he'll be able to play the LSU game either, because the swelling is happening on his knee, and it's not going down the way they hoped it would. Hopefully he'll get back pretty soon. They still have a good bevy of running backs. But that whole mix that they depended on last year, 235 yards a game rushing, has been, almost cut in half these first 2 games, and that shouldn't have been the case because of the level of competition you were playing.
And the competition, Kent State had a pretty good game. Look at Austin Peay, 13-6. Tennessee struggled at halftime. I'm getting all kind of chatter. They're having a players-only meeting up in Knoxville. Well, why not? They got to go to the Swamp, a place they hadn't won in 20 years. What did you see that out of the special teams in that game against Kent State? Do you see an improvement there? You've got a kicker. Let's talk about the guy that can kick it close to 60 yards, because it's going to come in valuable to win a game or 2 this year, I bet. Yeah,
Cam Little is their kicker. Is a big personality, has a big leg. They feel very confident if they get, in somewhere in the 40s, that he'll be able to give them 3, and that's a pretty solid weapon. He's been pretty successful since he got here, pretty consistent. Also, I think one of the biggest differences this year, they really had trouble punting last year, not necessarily in yards in the air, but net yards. The punts by Max Fletcher have had much better coverage this year. He's getting the ball up much higher, and that's allowing those to get down there. And also, you look at Isaiah Satega. He has, hasn't broken one yet all the way, but he's provided a lot of excitement. And you can see anytime in the stadium that the ball's in the air and they think he's going to have a chance to return it, that people are standing up and getting excited because they know that he has that elusiveness to get there. So the special teams is the best it has been to this point in these last 3 seasons for sure.
I like the electric player, Tesla. Does he have to be charged up at halftime? That's a great name. But all right, question from Yule Gibbons in Cave City, Arkansas. By the way, an aside, the best watermelons you'll find anywhere are Cave City, Arkansas watermelons. Now, people may argue that, but that's up near Ashflat, which is north of Hardy. Cave City and their high school football team, the Cave City Cavemen. You ever seen it? I mean, that's in the cheerleaders, the cave women or whatever. I love it. Are you concerned about Rocket Sanders' knee injury at this point?
Well, certainly. If you're not, you're just not thinking clearly. I mean, this is a kid who went into the first game, did not have a great first game, did not seem to have that burst that, he's had in the past, and I think only had 50-something yards. He was out second game. He's going to be out this game. You hear that the swelling is not going down as fast as they want. So, yes, I mean, when a guy's not playing, you have to be concerned about him. And, they pretty much said they don't know whether he'll play at LSU or not, which to me means he probably won't play at LSU. I mean, you're probably pretty hopeful, if you feel that it's headed the right way. I know that, you got the best doctors, best medical people over there trying to do whatever they can. And I've been on this show, talking about what a great running back room it is with all those, they've got 5 guys, including Isaiah Oxtava, who's a freshman. But let's be honest, Rocket Sanders was picked either first or second team SEC running back, all conference running back. He was that for a reason. He had over 1,400 yards last year rushing, had many in the passing game as well. He's your number one guy for a reason. If your number one guy's out there, you feel better. If he's having knee injuries, and we know how knee injuries can linger, yes, concerned about it. Do I think he'll come back and play? Well, from hearing the people, from the people that I trust, yes, I do. But they don't seem as confident in the quick recovery as they did. So when they get a little silent, you have to have some, some concern about what's going on.
And I look at Arkansas defensively. They got after Kent State. The game was kind of, nothing was happening. They got that pick 6. They jumped the route. That was impressive. What are you seeing that encourages you that, okay, let's say Rocket Sanders misses half the season. Can that defense keep them in every game? Because to me, they look like they can.
Well, I think so. Antonio Greer, who didn't even play the first game, was able to have that big interception. And for a while, the defense had more total yards than the offense did and more points before the offense really got going in the second half when they made an adjustment to basically use the running back as a lead blocker. And, kind of turn KJ loose running the ball. It's not something that they want to do on a consistent basis. We've talked about that over and over. But you got to win football games. You got to move the football. At one point in the second quarter, they had 7 yards rushing and 7 yards passing for 14 yards total offense before they finally got one drive going. And they ended up with 3 out of 5 drives. There were long drives, kind of put the game away, not cosmetically, but at least numerically put it away. I tell you that you talked about the defense. Very, very impressed with the defensive line. The linebackers have played well. Obviously, Greer's one of those, and the secondary, I think, has done a good job. I think that they could wade through October and that tough schedule without Rocket. I know they don't want to try. They could, but that was going to be a tough schedule. They're going to have a tough time winning a couple of those games on the road anyway. Your competitiveness would be much better off with your best players out there. So we're going to see, but I'm not totally confident that they're going to do any better than I thought going into the season in October, just because of the toughness of that schedule.
Yeah. All right, another question from Lefty Frizzell, Jasper, Arkansas. That's home of the International Museum of Junk, by the way, and also where I've seen more elk. I saw 36 elk in Jasper, Arkansas on the side of the road. That's a huge elk herd in Arkansas. But where are the Arkansas wide receivers? Then I know we've talked a lot about the height and all like that, but it's 2 games in, but it's kind of like a 5K road race, 10K, whatever. You want to get off to a good start. You don't want to be 300 yards behind at the 1 mile point from the leader.
I think the wide receivers have been fine. Isaac Tesla,
Okay.
as you mentioned, has had a couple of big catches. Andrew Armstrong had 2 touchdown catches last weekend. Showed good separation. I'd like to see a little bit more of Isaiah Satega in the situation. Jaden Wilson obviously had the big play during the first game and had a big catch this week. I'm not worried about the wide receivers. I think they'll come along. It's much easier to pass the ball when you have a running attack that can give you a 2-dimensional offense. That's not been the case to this point yet. They've got to improve running the ball. But I'm not worried about the wide receivers at all. There's a bunch of new ones, a bunch of tall ones. But I think they've made the plays that they're supposed to have made so far. Now I will say that KJ, while he's had a good year so far, has missed a couple of shots deep that would make this this wide receiver numbers look a lot better.
Yeah, and I think that question was more like, where the progress, in your opinion, because I'm getting a lot of questions on here, and I'm trying to type them in because most people are texting me versus just putting the comments. If you can, folks, just send the comments in directly right here off of YouTube or whatever, if you want to do it that way. But a lot of questions. And I will say this, people, here's one, Arkansas, how did they let Kent stay around that long? Well, how did Tennessee let Austin Peay stay around? How did Auburn struggle with Cal? A lot of people thought, they'll kill him. It's because these guys are all on scholarship, Dudley. They're all good players. And you know this as well as I do. When you're down on field level before a game, you ever notice all that talk and all that hyperbole about we're going to do this and that to that team, it goes out the window. You're looking at those guys and you're going, damn, these guys work out. They train. They didn't come here. They're not the Washington Generals, and we're not the Harlem Globetrotters. Yeah,
but let's be honest, too, about another thing. 56-6 was the score that Central Florida put up on Kent State the week before.
Yeah.
Arkansas went out and had a pretty good game in its first game against Western Carolina. I didn't go to the Kent State game thinking it was going to be close. I didn't think it was going to be 28-6. I thought it was going to be, much higher scoring than that. And I'm sure that's what the 85 players that Arkansas walked out on the field thought as well. You can't do that on a consistent basis and be able to put your best effort forward. And then they, just like Western Carolina did, they really, put a lot of people in the box again. And as I said, they had to make that adjustment at halftime. Kenny Bell, Kent State's head coach, who used to be on the PJ Flex staff at Minnesota, he did what he could, and then he knew the adjustment that Arkansas would make. They kind of laid on him in the second half. They used that running back as a lead blocker instead of a ball carrier, and they were able to do those things because they have a 245-pound quarterback. And at one point, they lined up with in the backfield 4 different guys that were combined close to 900 pounds, and it scored on a 1-yard run by Rashad Dominion. So that was pretty interesting. That was a throwback to Bill Keedy at Newport and lining up as many as you could in the backfield and just saying, we're going to run it, stop us.
Well, you go back whenever a team struggles in the past, and it's always a good idea. You go back to what you're good at, and running the football is a state of mind. It's a mentality. Sometimes winning the game 14-10 is a lot better than going out and beating a team 49-7, because if your offensive lineman and your defensive lineman are butting heads in practice every day, that makes them both tougher. Your thoughts on Arkansas's defensive line, and what you say, people hang on every word, Dudley, because you got 40+ years experience in covering the Razorbacks, and you don't just throw stuff out there for clicks and shits and giggles and whatever. You're truth broker. I love it. The defensive line, though, you pointed out there was a lot of depth there, and they only gave up 6 points. I don't care who you're playing. That's discipline.
The defensive line has done fine so far. I think they're going to continue to do some other things. I know people don't like to hear it, but you don't show everything the first two games, against overmatched opponents. You don't bring out the full playbook. You don't break out the stunts and different defenses, pre-snap movements. Yes, you could look a lot better if you did that, but you wouldn't be able to make as much headway as you want to at the BYU game and the LSU game and on down there. Now, I'm not saying what they've done well, because I came home here last Saturday night and this is my wife Petra often asks, tell me about the game. Give me a encapsulation of the game. And I just told her I didn't know if they were going to be as good as I thought they were going to be at the start of the year. The offensive line was going to have to get some push. That they were not as good and not as crisp as I thought they should be. They can, they can change my mind on that. But you talk about me being a truth broker. I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything's all right. Be Douglas Niedermeyer from, National Lampoon's Animal House and say, oh, well, it's not. They've got to get better. And that's how Coach Pittman started his press conference on Monday. He listed off about 8 different things that they had to get better at. And one of them was, he's all into the responsibility. He talked about himself, and he also talked about that our offensive coordinators got to find the things that we're the best at and start doing that more.
You hear these terms among the guys on TV all the time, gap integrity and all. I mean, integrity just means you're where you're supposed to be. And so when you look at Arkansas in the first 2 games, you don't want to show everything that you've got. But what do you think Arkansas against BYU will have to do they haven't done or haven't been able to do in the first 2 games? Because, again, BYU with 61 new players, I mean, the book on them is maybe what you saw in the spring game, if you got any tape of that, and their first couple of games.
Well, I don't, you're not able to put 11 in the box, but I don't care if they put 11 in the box. They put 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. You got to be able to run your offense. And, you take a few shots running into the line, but you got to come out, open it up a little bit more. I think, pass on first down and some other things that you can do to get them off off their game plan. Kalani Stakati, who's the BYU's coach, talked about this with their team as well. They haven't rushed the ball the way they wanted to, only 70 yards average per game with BYU. And then, they're talking about the same thing. Their fans and media are talking about the same things about how, are you going to switch up people on the offensive line? How are you going to get more push? Are you worried about it? And he talked about how the first 2 teams that they had played, also Sam Houston and then Southern Utah, had loaded the box as well. We all are going to get tired of hearing about loading the box. You've got to figure out if there's going to be 8 people within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, you've got to do more, different varieties and all that. And I'm sure that's what we're going to see, a little bit more variety this weekend, because loading the box is a great term and describes what's happening. But people are going to get tired of hearing that if you don't get out of that box and get the other team doing something that they're not comfortable. These first 2 teams defensively have been able to, in different situations, 3 of the 4 halves, I think, have been very comfortable against Arkansas's offense. And you can't allow defenses to get comfortable. You've got to show some variety. You've got to show some, more movement. And yes, again, I talked about, how they hadn't shown everything, but you still, whatever you do, you got to do it well.
Yeah. Well, and this is it. You go out and if Arkansas would have beaten Kent State 63-0, people would have said, oh, they didn't play anybody. So it's 28-6 and they're concerned, but that keeps the team hungry. And I think from a coaching staff's perspective, it's easier to get those guys' attention, say, look, man, you think you're just going to show up and go, boo, and beat these teams. It ain't going to happen. I don't care what happened the week before. Every week sets up and is shaping the next week. So Arkansas's got BYU, and the next week they go to Baton Rouge to play LSU. In my opinion, and from everybody we're talking with on Sidelines 6 days a week, the SEC, is it downhill? I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of elite quarterbacks or any elite quarterbacks when you compare this league, say, to the Pac-12. But players, as Butch Thompson says, players can get better as the season goes along. So we may not think we're there yet, but there's a lot of football left to play. And I think the book is the jury is still out. The early season big time matchups, hell, Ole Miss has got the best victory against Tulane, but how costly was that? How long is Trey Harris, their super rock star receiver, going to be out? I mean, I don't know, but I think the league there's a lot of opportunity for teams right now. You just got to shut out all the distractions.
Yeah, I'll make a few statements here. I think if Arkansas shows up as uninspired as it did last Saturday and plays without the execution that it did last Saturday, they will lose to BYU, barring, turnovers and all that. They've been very lucky on turnovers so far. They've had a big margin in terms of being able to, for that, with both teams, to be able to have field position and all those things, be able to do things. They better have a better effort this week or they'll lose to BYU. BYU is good enough to come into Fayetteville and beat Arkansas. Do I think it's going to happen? No, because I hear and I know that the happiness and all that over at the football complex has not been there this week, and that's fine. Somebody was asking me about, would you think Pittman was throwing people under the bus? He didn't seem to be, that happy. Well, you're 2-0, but there's nothing to be happy about. You got to go out and play to a certain level if you're in the SEC. If you don't, you're going to lose football games. You can lose them to Liberty, who was a pretty good football team last year, but not one that Arkansas should have lost to. You have to go out and you have to improve. You have to get better. And sooner or later, people are going to get tired of fits, get tired of using the code words and all that just basically you're saying you're not living up to the standard that you set for yourself.
Well, teams have standards, and hell, I've got 4 kids, you've got kids. You can yell at people, and to a point it works, but you better do it on rare occasions. Ultimately, that's got to start from within. The Arkansas coaches, there's only so much they can do. With social media being what it is, there's messaging coming from everywhere. But you're right. Coaches speak to their teams through the media way more than most people realize, don't they? And through the media like you.
Yeah, absolutely. That happens. And, that his first, 2.5 minutes of the press conference was clearly a way of saying, y'all are starting getting it done to the point right now. We all have to get it done. We all have a culpability for this situation. We've all got to get better or the schedule is certainly improving. And we knew that from the start of the year that really the toughness of the schedule was going to go in order these first 4 games. I do think that you look at each situation and try to be objective about it, try to look at what can happen better. And I think whether it's, it's interesting. Houston Nutt was around here last weekend. We got inducted to the Hall of Honor, got a nice round of applause, when he was introduced out on the field. He knew when, and some people may have thought it was cheesy and all that, but he knew when to take a situation and turn it into, like a world war. You have to have your best effort, and all that. He did a really good job at doing that. And sometimes it worked great. Sometimes, it fell flat. A lot of times, depending on where you had Darren McFadden in the backfield or Matt Jones, or, all that. I do think that there's a certain level that you have to get to play a college football game in terms of intensity and passing. I don't think it's been there these first 2 games. I think it was probably there more than any in the first half against Western Carolina. You were able to have some big plays. They did not have the big plays last weekend. You have to get some confidence doing that. But you got to show up ready to play. And I'm not certain that that's been the case. And that goes, and, you go from the top down. If the head man and his coaching staff gets all the credit for when they play well and get to bowl games and get, salary advancements and all that, they have to take the blame too. And I think that, they're all having a period over there this week where they're all thinking about what they're doing, how they're doing, and when they're doing it, and what they should do to make that a better and more consistent play after play after play.
Yeah. Dudley, hang on with us if you can. Dudley Dawson's on here with us, hogville.net. George Plaster on Sports Up in Nashville is going to be with us after the break. Want to keep getting your take. So we're going to have a really in-depth discussion about college football, the SEC, other teams, about where we are, because the Pac-12 is having really good, but the conference is going to be out of business. It's really crazy. But when you have Boris Karloff, George Kliavkoff as your commissioner, what do you expect? Okay, Dudley Dawson, tell people real quick how they can follow you, because I know if you can stay with us, but I want people to do that before the break, and we'll be right back.
Hogville.net is our message board. We're putting a lot of stuff up these days, not only football, but baseball. Basketball is about to start as well. Softball, just a lot of things going on. FearlessFriday.com is the high school site that is ours as well. How much I love high school and all that. And then also I've had a good time these last couple of weeks with Twitter talking about the Cardinals. They still suck, but they have been better, and that's given me some nice. Adam Wainwright at 199 now for wins. He's got 3 more starts, so I'll be talking a lot about that, hoping he can get to 200.
Well, look, you took 2 out of 3 from the Bravos, the Braves.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial. We'll be right back with Dudley Dawson, George Plaster up in Nashville after this.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you, and bring in George Plaster with us right now. Dudley Dawson at Pebble Beach, George Plaster up in Nashville, in the mid-state, they call it. Rob Browne over here at the Cherry Farm today, right outside of Memphis, over in West Tennessee, the land of the Scomitos. The mosquitoes here will knock on the door and say, all right, let us in. Come on, we're coming to get you. They come through the chimney. It's an all-out war. George, I don't know if you've heard the discussion. Dudley's with hogville.net.
Yeah, Dudley, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Good to see you again.
I like your backdrop. A heck of a lot better than mine.
Yeah, I like to tell people that's in the backyard, but it's not. It calms me, makes me feel better.
It
By
does.
the way, I'm going to.
It's a baseball field. It's not a golf. It's baseball.
Stuff and show you who the next world champion is going to be. Let's see if I can do that.
I agree.
If their pitching is good enough, the rest of it is there.
Yeah, I agree. Getting Max Fried back, I think, was a big piece as well. But yeah, they're playing well. My wife has been a longtime Braves fan, and so that's obviously my number 2 team. Because happy wife, happy life, and we know that my Cardinals will not be invited to the tournament this year, so we will put all our faith into the Atlanta Braves, and hopefully they'll play the Baltimore Orioles. I was a Baltimore Orioles fan, along with a Cardinals fan back in the day, because of Brooks Robinson, who was such an idol of mine that I named my oldest son after him. So,
does John Mozeliak have pictures on the owner?
It must be. He, he's had some good moves, getting us Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt, but pitching, he's got to go. I mean, very simple. The bow ties and the sweaters over the thing were cute, when we were winning and being successful, but all that's got to go. They've got to have some major changes, whether it's in the front administration or in his mind and his philosophy on what needs to happen. They send 3 million people through those gates every year. You can't be You can't not spend enough money, and that's what they didn't do this year. They've got a lot of 4A players out in the outfield that they've got to figure out. Jordan Walker obviously is going to be a good one.
He's a keeper.
But it's a poorly constructed team by a guy who said, if I just keep them winning, I'll be okay here.
Well, I hope Adam Wainwright gets number 200. He's a class act. I'm rooting for him, like a lot of Cardinal fans are. He deserves to get number 200, and then it'll be interesting to see what the voters do with him, because in this era of baseball, 200 might get you in there.
Yeah, and getting him through that fifth inning last night was big. That was the biggest part of my night. Getting him through the fifth inning and then being able to hold on. Man, he deserves to get to 200. He's got 3 shots. I hope it doesn't come down to the last game at Busch Stadium, which is when he's set to pitch if he needs to.
Oh, wouldn't that be classic?
Mm.
Well, you're all talking about baseball, and that's one of the things that. And I like this comment that someone texted me. Baseball is the most cerebral of all the sports. The great sports writers that I grew up listening to, when they finally started, at least in Memphis, letting the sports writers come on the air, man, they all know baseball. And I've watched, growing up in Memphis, Allie Prescott, who I think is really cool, baseball guy. He was speaking one time at the Quarterback Club in Memphis, and he said, this was when they were bringing the Redbirds, AAA affiliate, back in like 2000 to AutoZone Park, downtown Memphis. And he said, listen, baseball is so big. He said, when you think about the Cardinal fan base, you think about obviously all over Missouri, Southern Illinois, Kentucky, Arkansas, West Tennessee, Nashville, Mississippi, into Louisiana. It's huge. He said, you think about a man and his wife sitting out on the front porch over in Osceola, Arkansas, big pitcher of lemonade, cold beer, just watching out over the sunset, over a flooded rice field, listening to the Cardinals, Jack Buck, Mike Shannon, Anheuser-Busch, St. Louis Cardinals. As a kid, I can remember so many scout trips, canoeing up in Missouri and Arkansas, and all the dads would be over there getting liquored up, listening to us. I mean, they weren't driving, drinking a beer, listening to the Cardinals game. That, and then I think about, as Chuck Oliver in Atlanta calls them, everywhere you watch the Braves when they play around the country, he goes, these are the TBS kids that grew up. When we came home in high school, before practice or whatever you were doing, you had Harry Carey and Steve Stone shouting out to all the shut-ins in Kankakee, Illinois, or at St. Cecilia's Convent. And then you had, the Cardinals. When I went to Auburn, I would go listen on KMOX, AM 1120, to the Cardinals broadcast. And to this day, you cannot go to a game without listening to the play-by-play of these guys. It's like having a drone up in the air. But I love baseball. I don't understand it like y'all two do, but I love it, and I love how it mixes together in the South. Cardinals Nation, Braves country. I love it.
What really happened, a radio station, and you brought it up, KMOX built that fan base.
Yeah.
And for a couple of years, the Cardinals made a penny-wise, pound-foolish decision to bag KMOX over money. God. And they got hammered for it, because all those places you used to bring up, they're what built the best fan base in America.
Yeah.
I could only wish that the Braves fan base were what the Cardinals is, which is why when I hear Mozeliak pinch pennies, I want to puke, because they're drawing $3 million a year. The sad thing, I went to a series earlier this summer, and downtown economy of St. Louis is totally predicated on the Cardinals.
Yes.
And when they're not good, their downtown really suffers. Mm-hmm. And you guys have seen it the last couple of months. Man, there are a lot of seats that on normal Cardinal years are full. They're not full. And Somebody in their ownership better figure it out, because they're about to screw up a really good deal.
Yeah, I totally agree. And one of my childhood memories back in the day was, our St. Louis would play on the West Coast against the Dodgers or San Francisco, and I would get a transistor radio and I'd put it under my pillow and be able to hear those games. Thinking I was keeping it from my mom. That she didn't know that I was listening. And we had to talk about that one time. She said, I knew what you were doing. And she said, that was fine. That was a battle I was willing to let you win, And I said, yeah, that worked out pretty well for me. And I remember when Jack Clark used to hit home runs against us instead of hit them for us. But y'all KMOX, wow. I mean, that was the a lot of great AM stations we had at there these days. I'm sure that there's some kids these days who don't even know what AM is. It's not even on their radar.
Yeah, that's kind of sad.
Well, and this is just a comment from a viewer in Bible. Baseball talk gives me chills. It's because of the history. And I worked for A.G. Edwards, a firm based from 1887 until they sold about 10 years ago to Wells Fargo. Worked for them from May of 93 till April of 01. Spent a lot of time at Market Street and Jefferson in St. Louis. And the Edwards family, oh my God, are they ever Cardinals? The whole A.G. Edwards getting Cardinals tickets to a game at Busch Stadium and going to Union Station there in Deerdorf Steakhouse, Laclede's Landing, downtown by the Arch and all. That is an awesome trip. And how many times did my dad, when I went up there the night we had to go for 3 weeks of training up in St. Louis, we had to stay there for A.G. Edwards 3 weeks. He said, boy, whatever you do, pay attention when you get there. Don't get on the wrong interstate and end up in East St. Louis. Sure enough, I ended up in East St. Louis. And I was like, what? I think I need to be back across the river. But we went to some Cardinals games, sat out there in the outfield, and listened to college football games on my radio, a little white transistor radio I still have. But the Cardinal fan base is the most baseball savvy, intelligent, loyal, benevolent of all fan bases. And I've been to a Yankees game. Been to a lot of Cardinals games, not nearly as many as y'all two have. But you're right. The Braves fans, finally, when they play the Mets or the White Sox or the Cubs in Atlanta, it is majority Atlanta. It didn't used to be that way. It's never been like that in St. Louis. That fan base, you're right. There ain't nothing like them in all of college football.
Quick little story tying in Arkansas and Cardinals. Coach Broyles, obviously the famous coach and legendary athletic director here, back when he was coaching.
Big Daddy.
Yeah, he went to a superstar athlete house. It turned out to be Mike Shannon, who back in the day, was not only a good baseball player, but a good football player. And Mike Shannon's dad offered Coach Broyles, a famous teetotaler, a beer. And he knew that he had to, play along to a certain point, because he was trying to land Mike Shannon. He kind of he'd look over and he'd act like he'd take a drink of the beer and he'd set it down and there was a dog over there. The dog would come over and drink the beer. So it looked like he was going along and trying to get Mike Shannon, but Mike Shannon told me that story one time, and I thought that was just a tremendous deal. They knew what he was doing too, but they thought that it was great that he was giving it a shot.
Well, I mean, you think about what, and this is what's crazy. And here's another comment from a viewer down in Valdosta, Georgia, about, best thing for the Braves was Ted Turner needed programming for WTCG. What did he buy the Braves for?
10 million.
4 million. It was 4 million. I mean, maybe 10, but either way, that was a bargain. I think they would sell for a lot more now, George.
Here's what's crazy. Atlanta Stadium, the first place, and I've got a little replica of it up here somewhere. Well,
yeah, walk around. Let's see. I want to see that. That you talk about Atlanta Filthy County Stadium.
This is my little rec room. Okay, I'm not doing a very good job with the camera, but you can kind of. this was the greatest baseball year of my life, 91,
Yeah.
worst to first. And I'm sorry if I'm in the way of it, but you all can tell.
I love it.
I'm a hardcore baseball fan, and my rec room will prove it.
Well, listen, again, baseball's making a comeback. And I think the numbers, guys, are up 13% year over year, the comparable TV numbers. And they got pitch clock, whatever they're doing to speed the game up. Dudley, you like that? Dudley, you muted.
I didn't at first. I was like, leave my game alone. It's fine, And then as it went along and got more used to it, I was glad. It really cut the amount of time off the game. It kept these guys from stepping out of the box and spending 5 minutes fixing their jewelry and all that stuff. Before getting back in, you had pitchers, now who have to get the ball and throw pretty much. And so, I was all against it to start the season, but, a couple weeks in, I said, this ain't that bad.
I have not been a big fan of Rob Manfred. The guy's a labor negotiator, and while he claims to love baseball, I'm not sure I believe it. But I will give the devil his due. They did a lot of research on the minor league level. When I go to a Sounds game and I see what they're doing, they knew that if they could implement it, if the umpires would force the issue and make the batter get in the box and quit all the crap with the glove, opening it and closing it, which looks like one of the dumbest things going, that they could get 25 to 30 minutes off of a game, and they've been able to do that. The other thing is the getting rid of the shift, because it had really gotten monotonous. Now, shame on pull hitters for not being able to know how to go the other way, but baseball sort of solved the issue for them. It's a lot better game than it was 2-3 years ago. And even though I'm not a big Manfred fan, I got to give him some credit, because these moves, you can see it in ratings, you can see it in attendance. Baseball is making a little bit of a comeback.
Yeah, they were having a rover play. Basically, the rover in softball was playing in the an infield outfield position in baseball. And Matt Carpenter, I know, the former Cardinal, he played with the Yankees last year, San Diego this year. He's thinking, man, they did this 2 years too late.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm sitting here pulling up something. How much better can you get for watching a baseball game than Bill Murray and Harry Carey opening night at Wrigley Field?
Hello again, everybody. Harry Carey at Wrigley Field on this noteworthy night indeed. 8/8/88. That's the date. And this one's for you, Bill Murray.
Rob,
it just doesn't get any better.
This one will put everybody to sleep. When I moved to Memphis to be Memphis State's announcer, the first night I was there, I went to a Chicks game.
Yeah.
And Harry Carey was doing the PA system. And it was a deal that helped me. George Lapidus set up.
Yeah.
Apparently they were friends.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I met Harry Carey that night. Now, I'm not sure Harry Carey remembered it. I'm not sure what condition he was in. This would have been August of 1987. But, I get a big grin every time I hear him. And I've always wanted to know, who is Pete Von Auken from Peoria? Because he talked about him incessantly.
Harry Carey would get up there, and the best, he'd go, "Want to say hello to all the shut-ins out there and the widows and the orphans watching the Cubs." And Steve Stone would go, "That's very good there, Harry. Cubs here in the third inning now, trying to dig out of a hole down 5-1. Harry sometimes didn't know the score, but the best was when he would lead the crowd in the singing of "Take Me Out to the Ballpark" in the 7th inning, and he would lean out of the window in the press box and almost fall out into the net. But you know, that's
Pete Fox spelled backwards is
well, how about when he would get up there with the names, especially of those players from Venezuela and Dominican Republic? He would go, Carlos Belafonte Ho Chi Minh up to the plate. I mean,
one of his best ones was the old player Dave Rader, because one day he came out with Raider spelled backwards is Raider.
I mean, you cannot make the stuff up. And so many of the announcers today go to that Midwestern school where they teach them to talk with their jaw like, we're watching the Cardinals baseball here right now. They're down 2-1. And it's like, here's Harry Carey trying to pronounce somebody's name. I'll get to that in a second. But I think the thing about baseball that we love is you can go to a game, sit in the outfield in a seat with your feet up. I mean, if there's a seat or two around you, but it's more laid back. I love every sporting event I go to, but baseball, there's no better sport to participate in, to be at in person than baseball. Would y'all agree?
Yeah, and I understand there are some people who can't, deal with it, but they probably didn't do well on the ACT and the SAT either.
Well, look, I'm going to be biased. I did 4 years of minor league baseball on radio when I was in my 20s. You've got to love it to do that, because you're not going to get rich at that level. The hardest announcing job to crack is a big league job. You got all these guys on the minor league level who work their fannies off.
Yeah.
And what has started to happen now is a lot of the ESPN personalities who have gotten canned end up on the major league level. Steve Berthume in Arizona.
Yeah.
I can't think with the Dodgers. Charlie Steiner with the Dodgers, who did one of the funniest ESPN commercials in history. If you all remember that. But anyway, it
was good.
Yeah, I mean, you got to love it to work on the minor league level and not get paid very well and really not know if there's a future to it. You really have to love it.
You do. This is Harry Carey trying to pronounce Mark Grudzielanek. You remember that name? This is him. This is some classic right here. I mean, you just can't make the stuff up. But yeah, I love this baseball talk. I also want to talk real quick. Olin Buchanan's going to be on here in about 8 minutes from TexAgs.com. We're going to get into some great discussion about Texas A&M. And baseball and football in the South are married to one another. And I think at the Cardinals, I asked this question to Eli Drinkowitz last year. Have you ever thought about trying to tap in to that passion of the Cardinal fan base and get that over there to Columbia, 107 miles west on I-70? George, you do great job like Dudley does covering all these different teams and all. You think that's possible? I mean, why hasn't Missouri gone in there and said, let's partner up? Because to me, when my friends go out to a game, their team is playing Missouri and Columbia, I go, if you can do a Friday night in St. Louis for a Cardinals game, you got to do it. Go downtown to the Laclede's Landing and the whole downtown scene. St. Louis is an absolutely awesome city to visit.
Well, let me ask this question. Let me try it at you guys. Is Missouri happy in the SEC, or has this been a bigger bite than they wish to have chewed?
I think that you still hear their fans wanting to go to the Big Ten, or what is it now, the Big 22. However many teams they've got.
The Big
there.
Kahuna.
Yeah, Eli is a different bird. He actually used to live down just a little ways down from where I live right now when he was coaching here in Springdale High and different places. I remember you asking that question, and he had that look in his eye that, I've kind of thought about that, but then again, I've never thought about it, which is kind of his answer sometimes. I think they're two distinct fan bases. The Cardinals are I don't want to say worldwide, but, nationwide because of KMOX and the things we've talked about. Whereas Missouri is kind of, just their little area.
Yeah.
That's one of the things about Arkansas that's allowed Arkansas's programs to succeed and thrive and bring in so much money is it's basically the professional sports team around here. And they've been able to do that. I think it's harder for Missouri to create a niche there than it has been for Arkansas.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think Dudley's right. I think Missouri feels sort of like Kentucky during the war between the states. You had the Orphan Brigade, the state was split. I'm not sure they know where they do want to be. It's also tough. I mean, think about it. St. Louis on the eastern flank, on the western side, Kansas City, and the Chiefs doing what they're doing. How far can the sports dollar go in the state? And there's a lot of things pulling at them. The geographical footprint of the Southeastern Conference is the teams are the biggest things around. Now we're bringing in Texas and A&M. Of course, they've got the Cowboys and the Texans and the Spurs, and they've got a lot of things going for them. But man, that's a good question. Missouri. I know when you go to Columbia, I'm not sure. It's almost like it's not like Georgia Tech, but it's got some of the problems that Georgia Tech does. I don't think they understand that it's in the DNA of the Southern people to love football because we're Scotch, Irish, and Celts, and we love a good fight. We love drinking. We love hell raising. That's why football is so appealing in the Deep South, George. That's just my opinion.
Well, here's one of the things that's going to play out over the next 3 years. In the greed, people have jumped to moves that geographically don't make any sense. And you do wonder at some point if USC, for instance, is their fan base really going to get excited about playing Rutgers? I don't think so.
No way.
The geography that is being lost at some point is going to play out in some fan discontent. Now, you can win to a point where who gives a damn? If Missouri is the 4th ranked team in the country, being in the SEC is great. But if they're down there with Vandy, at the bottom of the league, then it doesn't feel so good. And then people start saying, why are we even in the SEC? St. Louis is not an SEC town. It's just not. It's what do they call it? The gateway to the West?
Yes.
They don't call it the gateway to the SEC. And I just, I do wonder if some of these realignments aren't going to end up biting people in the butt because regionally they don't make any sense.
They don't.
What's interesting is Arkansas and Missouri are fairly close together, but there's a manufactured rivalry there. Arkansas viewed its rivalry as LSU, during this early part of the SEC because they had great games with them, and that was the game of the day after Thanksgiving. Then Texas A&M came in the league. They switched it up a little bit. Missouri has owned Arkansas for a couple of reasons. Like they've had better defenses and things during that time. Also, they care more about that game, but they still don't care about it as much as they do Kansas. You can go to an Arkansas-Missouri game, and all you hear is talking about the Missouri-Kansas basketball game.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of like the girl, they left the girlfriend and found a new one, but they're still pining for the old girlfriend. And again, I think we've got a real good athletic director right now, but it's just never been a great fit. And even in the SEC, they're not even in the right division. So,
yeah, you're right. Hey, look, we're going to take a quick break, and y'all stay on if you can. We're going to have Olin Buchanan.
I got to step out.
Okay. Well, Dudley, look, great stuff as always. Dudley Dawson, hogville.net. George, stay on if you can. We're going to have Olin Buchanan, texags.com. There's a lot we're going to get into, but Dudley, great stuff as always, man. You and George, we need to do some. We're going to get into some. I'm going to get y'all paired up together. We get into the baseball playoffs. because y'all's baseball IQs are OTC, as my kids would say, off the chart, off the chain. Love this stuff, man. We'll take a quick break, take this, and we'll be right back for the final segment on Wednesday's edition of Sidelines. Thanks all of y'all for listening and watching. We appreciate you more than you can imagine. Be right back.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. Man, that was a quick one. Let me bring in Olin Buchanan right now down in College Station, Texas. George, he's got one of the great offices in America, and I always say this because it just sounds good, but he opens up his door, and he is out there on the practice field. No, he's close to it, but Olin, I was down in Orange Beach, Alabama. Oh, my God, it's so beautiful. We got back Monday night, and I was out there Sunday afternoon, ran into an Aggie, Casey Goodjohn from Claiborne County, Texas. You know where that is. They all know who you are. I can tell you that. And
the post office.
Yeah. All right. And they were talking. Yes. Let me throw one at you. This is some comments that he had already today about before you came on. But, you know, it's really neat to whenever you're out and about. Now he's a listener to the show. It's really cool. And he said yesterday, yeah, it was tough leaving Orange Beach. He said, if you could toss something out about Ernest Cronauer touchdown in that Miami game would be awesome. He and his brother are great to have on the team and great family. I'll push out the info to my buddies. They are loyal Aggies. He's got a daughter in school in College Station. But George, as you know, and Olin, everywhere we go, we run into people, and we're picking up a lot of listeners. We're very, very, very blessed viewers, and we're growing this thing. We just started our third year. But here's another question he's got. My daughter is counting the days until the Alabama game. One question is this a snowball trick of focusing around one game of the season to find you and missing the big picture of having a winning season and getting the return on investment from recruiting and facilities development? That from Casey Goodjohn, 20-year United States Marine. Got to love that. And Aggie for life. I call him an AFL.
Okay.
He's fired up.
What the question was and all of that, but I'll say this. I don't think that, like, if A&M was to beat Alabama, but still suffer through a difficult season like last year when they didn't play well, but they almost beat Alabama and then beat LSU. I don't think one big win is good enough. I think at this stage in the Jimbo Fish tenure, he's in his sixth season. It's time to start winning games at a high level. And I think the loss at Miami was a bitter disappointment. And they showed improvement on offense, which was a big problem last year. And they showed improvement in run defense, which was a big problem last year. But then they couldn't tackle and cover. It's like the old whack-a-mole game. Every time one problem pops up and you knock that one down, another one pops up. So they need to put together a complete game. And it was bitterly disappointing that they went out to Miami, a team that you knew it was going to be important to them.
Yeah.
Because first of all, they're playing an SEC opponent, and in a non-conference game, you're playing an SEC opponent. That opponent is jacked up for that game, and plus because A&M beat them last year. And I don't think that A&M matched Miami's intensity.
Yeah. George?
Olin, let me ask you this. When do they get to a point, and kind of give me is this a Ross Bjork call, or is it the J.R. Ewing wannabes that ultimately are going to get in a room in late October if this continues and say, let's get him the hell out of here even though it costs a bunch of money, we're going to pull an SMU and we're going to pay it. Who initiates that if it gets to that?
I do think if it gets to that, it's going to be over Ross's head. Ross has now ultimately, he'll be the guy that would pull the trigger if it comes to that. But I think it'll be he'd be reacting to someone telling him to do so, whether that be the chancellor or some board of regents or some really big money guys. And the thing is, A&M has boosters that are billionaires, and as much as $72 to $75 million. What a huge sum that is. If they really felt compelled to, I'm confident that they'd have guys that would come up with the money. But if you do that, is it worth, you got to balance and ask yourself, is it worth the stigma of saying, hey, you know what? The last two coaches they paid, if you let Jimbo go, the last two coaches, you will have paid $100 million. Say that again, $100 million not to coach. Because Kevin Sumlin left here with a $25 million buyout.
Wow. And again, here's where what I see a lot of for both of y'all. Everybody loves the Texas A&M fan base. They're so loyal. They're so passionate. Yet, I think they look at the situation, they're like, God, Jimbo Fisher, you're paying him all this money. And I think that's what's happening with all these coaches. We're looking at the amount of money that they make versus everything else.
Well, Rob, let me go take this. Look, like you just said, all coaches make a lot of money. So
all of them do.
That's not it per se. It's more like, well, you just got finished building a 180-yard long indoor practice facility. You tore down the one you had to make a bigger and better one. And now they're in the process. If you came to College Station, where the practice or part of the practice field is now, they're in the process of building a football center. It's going to be enormous, where the training, the food, the weights, the studying, everything is going to be under one roof. Because, quite frankly, Jimbo said, hey, you know what? We need this. So beyond what they pay Jimbo, it's been like, hey, okay, you need how much to get this assistant coach? Okay, we'll pay it. You need how much to get this upgrade to the facilities? Okay, we'll pay it. Okay, you want to build this because you think this will help out? Okay, we'll pay it. Oh, so NIL, all right, we're going to get involved, right? Yeah. So you ask yourself, and I think this is a fair question, and I would ask it to you guys. And I know you're on the peripheral, but when you consider A&M's geography and its proximity to Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, East Texas, and all, and their budget and their fan base, the resources, what do you think a coach would need to win at a elite level that Texas A&M does not provide? So, at what point then do you start winning at elite level? And it might be this year. It was one loss. It was early. Maybe you learn from what you did wrong and you come back and go on a roll. They lost badly to Alabama in 2020. And they came back and upset Florida and went on a roll. They didn't lose a game the rest of the year. So maybe it will be this year. But what if it's not? When?
Olin, isn't there also the Texas factor? A&M has always felt like a bastard stepchild to Texas. And then all of a sudden they get the advantage of moving into the SEC and they kind of move ahead. Well, now all of a sudden Sankey, apparently behind their back, agreed to bring Texas and Oklahoma into the league over A&M's dead body. And now all of a sudden, before they even officially come into the league, they go to Tuscaloosa and show Alabama who daddy is. And I think when it's all said and done, the frustration not only of Jimbo not particularly getting it done, because let's face it, in the second half, they got boat raced. And that pisses that fan base off. But secondly, it's the gall of watching Texas start to rise to the very top that I think is ultimately going to, unless Jimbo wins at a huge level here in October and November, that may be as much of what drives him out as his own record.
Well, it certainly doesn't help because, there's no doubt that Aggies and Longhorns, this state, which is like 890 miles from Beaumont to El Paso, and it still ain't big enough for Texas and Texas A&M. They don't, they don't like each other. And I guarantee you A&M, if it comes to a vote, we say Florida, they want to let Florida State and Clemson in and Louisville. Yeah, you damn right. We'll vote yes because Florida and Kentucky and Clemson or South Carolina, they were all for adding Texas. Hey, you want to throw in Georgia Tech? Okay. So, but let me say this: the Aggies were angry about what happened and what's going on with A&M before the Texas and Alabama game because A&M played earlier. And I'll tell you another thing that really stuck in their craw is how well Duke did against Clemson. You know who that coach is, and you know where
Mike
he came
Elko.
from. Yeah. Right. You know where he came from. So he went to and you're saying, hey, what's going on with these new coaches that have gone into much more difficult situations and are doing so well when you're in your 6th year and, in their last 17 games, we say 17 because that's an NFL season, right? In their last 17 games, A&M is 7-10, and 4 of those wins are over UMass and
LSU.
Well, I'm talking about UMass, New Mexico, Sam Houston, and Prairie View. That's 4 of your wins. So they're like 3-9 in their last SEC games. And this is the coach that came here and was saying, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And he's had a line that said, hey, we ain't done yet. And now we want to add to that and put in parentheses, we ain't done, quote, nothing yet. So it's getting to the time. Again, I'm not saying that they can't bounce back from an early loss. I mean, do you think Alabama's mailing it in because they lost to Texas? But it's time to start doing it and stop talking about it.
I agree. A question there from Jesse Coulter, Round Rock, Texas, right above Austin. Are you glad Texas is back on the schedule? I mean, not that you speak for all of the A&M fan base, but you and Billy Lucci and the people at TexAgs.com are the tip of the spear when it comes to A&M coverage. I don't think there are any other people that cover A&M, certainly not like y'all.
Well, thank you. We think that. We think too. Look, I thought it was great that A&M was the only team from Texas SEC. I thought that gave you an advantage, a little more prestige, all those things. So would have preferred it to be that way. But now that they're going to be on, bring it on. That's part of my heritage. I grew up watching that game on Thanksgiving. It was part of life in our state. Bring it on, and I guarantee you, A&M, even with all their situation, they ain't afraid of Texas. So, in fact, it used to be the folks in Austin were always saying, "Oh, you're afraid that you won't schedule us a non-conference because you're afraid." You're like, "Yeah, right. We'll fight Alabama, LSU, Auburn on an annual basis, Georgia here and there, but you're afraid of Texas." That's like saying I'll fight Ali, I'll fight Holmes, I'll fight Tyson, but I'm afraid to fight, some tin can. They're not afraid of Texas, so bring it on. But to be completely honest, they really liked the idea that Texas was wanting to be, was wanting to follow A&M, like a little brother would want to follow a big brother.
Yeah,
wherever big brother goes, Mama makes you take little brother along.
Yeah,
Mama Sankey is making him take little brother Texas along.
Yeah,
kicking and screaming.
Anyway, that's A&M spin on it.
Yeah, I love that take. Very good take, George.
Well, it's funny to watch. On my show, I call them J.R. Ewing wannabes. You know, these boosters that have got all this money. And by the way, if they really do, let me give my address. Send me some of it. you know, that they play a big role in this thing. And, you know, they've got the money to travel with the team.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the money to see it up close. And what they saw Saturday in the second half, when Miami finally caught fire, A&M didn't have any answers. And you know as well as I do, they're all Saturday night on Miami Beach somewhere looking at each other going, why isn't it any better than this?
Well, I don't think that was even the big money ags were alone in asking themselves that. I think everybody's asking if you're the poorest student here or the rich guy here. Now, let me say this about the rich Aggies. Now, again, A&M will have invested about $1 billion in this football program over the last about 10 years. You know, they renovated the stadium. It was $450 million, and they're paying Jimbo $100 million. And they paid, you know, they're building all this other stuff. And Jimbo's never really been questioned before. And I think that at some point, you know, these guys who make sizable contributions, I think they've actually been really good about it. It's like, so, yeah, well, hey, what does it take? What do you need? What do you need? Okay. But at some point, I think it's fair to ask for a return on the investment.
Well, I mean, Olin, if it's a publicly traded company, you're going to have a board of directors, the shareholders, they want an ROI. And I always say football games at these giant stadiums, 80, 90, 105, 108,000 are shareholder meetings. And even if a person is just buying 4-season tickets and they're paying what they're paying or whatever, when you've got skin in the game, you start to look for accountability. And I agree. I've always said this. You got a room full of, like on Dallas, J.R. Ewing's in there with a lot of money. They didn't make that money because they ain't smart. They didn't make the money because they're lucky. What A&M has a problem that most schools only dream of. As Franz Beard always says, the Aggies have a lot of money. Your endowment is right at $19 billion and change. What's a couple $100 million to, you know, friends and all. But only Texas and God, the Longhorns, have more money than A&M. But $19 billion on that endowment. Over 20,000 students in the College of Engineering at A&M. And the College of Engineering at every school in America is always where your wealthiest alumni are going to come from. Business aside, I really think, and so A&M's just annuitizing their future, Olin. I mean, they're on a gravy train with biscuit wheels, to borrow the line from Big E, Ernie McCracken, the greatest comb over in the history of movies from Kingpin.
Hey, Rob, before he answers that, I got to run. Olin, please tell Ross Bjork hello for me and send my address to a couple of those J.R. Ewing wannabes.
Is that George Plaster?
Yes, sir.
I used to listen to you in Nashville when I was living up there from 2006 to 2012.
Hey, thank you. You may have kept me in work.
Hey, George, look, man, tell people real quick how they can keep up with you. And I'm going to call you right after the show. Absolutely loved having you on here. And just you're fantastic.
Hey, let me buzz you more like about 10:45 because I've got a meeting at 10.
All right,
Rob, people can watch our show. There's a variety of ways: the Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. For me, the easiest way, and I'm a technical nimrod, is to go to my Twitter site, which is George Plaster TN. Our show live every day is 2 to 4 p.m. and obviously it's archived. And all this stuff I'm talking to you about, I have no idea what the hell it means.
How many gigabytes of DRAM do you have? My dad always goes, boy, speak English to me.
Yeah. Yes. Bingo.
Here we go.
Olin,
all right,
good
George.
Talking to you.
Good talk to you.
All right. Thanks so much. All right. You bet. Olin, again, I say this because I loved, you know, I met George. I've always known who he was because I've listened to him as well up at Media Days. I also watch how when Kirk Bowles asked a question, it's like E.F. Hutton, you know. I mean, there could be a room with 100 and, 500 reporters. And Kirk Bowles, yeah, go ahead. The Austin American Statesman. Dave Cody, he told me about Kirk. He told me about you. And there are a lot of people that cover the Aggies. But I was told they said Olin Buchanan is about as genuine as it gets. And then Audrey pulled up that story on Facebook about your career and how things were going. And then boom, you end up where you are now. I can't watch a documentary about great SEC football games anymore without some Olin Buchanan cameos in there. You know, watched one the other day, and there's Olin Buchanan, and you got a son at LSU.
Yep.
You're from White Oak, Texas. I love telling people, I always say, you know, he's from White Oak, population 2,500, football stadium 5,000. And just the A&M people, again, you can't find anyone when they go to College Station that doesn't come back and say, oh my God, those people are the most welcoming, inviting, most loyal and passionate people around. You know, I've got friends that get in a rickshaw and get, you know, pulled around town while they're drinking cold beers. Life is great, man. It ain't good. It's great. And I wonder sometimes A&M people, they're so welcoming, so inviting, that do they understand it? What's scary to me is it's like, you know, Coach Bryant used to say about Florida. If they ever decide to be great in football, we're all going to be fighting for scraps from Longshank's table. We're going to be fighting for second. Well, Spurrier showed what Florida's capable of, but it's doing it consistently. A&M has everything. What do they need more than anything else to be a successful football program? And if it's not Jimbo Fisher, who would you want to be the coach that would be the right fit and could stand up and get things done?
Well, I still think it might be Jimbo. Like I said, I'm not going to nobody's mailing anything in after one game, but they're getting tired of it, of having, why are you always having to rally, to have to get, why do you have to learn the lesson after a loss? Why don't you have it learned before you get into the game? But so I really think it comes down to, you know, you're going to have to find the coach. And again, like I said, it might be Jimbo, it might be making changes on his staff, but somewhere along the line, there's a disconnect. It's not about fan support, because you've got plenty of it. It's not about the recruiting base, because you're right square in Texas, where there's tons of players that are not far from you. They can play at A&M and be close to mama. It's not about being able to recruit nationally. They have, I think, I'd have to look at this, but I think 8 of their defensive starters are from out of state.
Yeah.
So they will recruit nationally. It's not about resources. A&M can match resources with everybody. So what is it? Well, it comes back down to, it has to be, you know, coaching, because that's the guy that brings in the players and then gets them to play at a high level. And they were saying that all the issues they had in the Miami game are easy fixes. That's what he said on Monday. They're easy fixes. Okay.
Yeah.
Fix
them. Yeah. Olin, and you're right. All the talk and all that stuff, it goes out the window once you kick off. And A&M, they've got ULM this weekend, and then the following week, Auburn comes in. Everything's different week to week. We know that. You were on the Austin American Statesman, one of the best papers in America, for 12 years with Kirk Bowles. Again, you're a gifted writer, excellent communicator, and you have a way of taking a mess of a situation and just making sense out of it. I mean, when I remember asking you about that A&M recruiting class that was ranked as the highest rated in the history of recruiting classes. And you made a very good point earlier this summer on one of your appearances on Sidelines. And we always love having you because we get stuff like this. You said, even with 30 or so players that left A&M at the end of last season, not all from that one class, but a lot of them were.
Some were.
Even with that, they were still the number one recruiting class in the country.
Yeah, probably not of
powerful.
All, you know, probably not of all time.
Yeah, exactly.
But you still had like 6 or 7 5-star guys, and all these 4-star guys still here.
Yeah.
Still had Walter Nolan, still had Shamar, Connor Wigman. You know, it goes on and on. And you know, some guys left because you had them leave. And I can think of 2 of them, or 3 of them off the top of my head, that went to other programs and got dismissed at other programs too. So the exodus wasn't as big a deal as it was made out to be. A lot of the vast majority of those guys, 90%, left because they wanted to be able to play somewhere. They weren't going to play at A&M. But still, all that's well and good. A&M needs to win some football games, and they need to. It's funny. I hear some try to rationalize that loss to Miami and say, well, Miami is a really good team, and they could be this and they could be that. I'm like, oh, so you only expect to beat bad teams? Yeah. You're supposed to beat if you're a championship caliber team, you beat really good teams.
Correct.
Don't feel good because, hey, we scored 33 points in a 15-point loss to a really good team, which may or may not be really good. But, you think Alabama is telling themselves, oh, gosh, we lost by 10 points to Texas, but it's okay. We think Texas is going to be a really good team. No, Alabama's saying that, that's unacceptable. What do we got to do to get better? And I think that needs to be the attitude among the coaches, the players, the administration, the fans, everybody. That should be the attitude. And maybe right there is the answer to your previous question about what A&M needs. Maybe they just don't have the right attitude from the top to bottom.
Yeah. You've got to have a mindset that anything worth having is worth fighting for, worth working for. Let me say this before we go. Most often we will see the face of Christ in the least among us, folks. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. You don't ever know what kind words and deeds can do to change people's lives. We're blessed. Go out and bless others. It makes a big, big difference in people's lives. We have the best listeners, viewers, sponsors around. We're so glad to have all of you. And let me say, call Chip Greer, 901-482-5680. Clays for Kids coming up September 22nd at the Memphis Gun Club out in Arlington, MSSA. They have 2 of the $3,000 teams left, 4-man shooting teams, and 1 of the $1,500 teams left. And they have 1 team left on the Archbishop J. Peter Sarton Open October 2nd, Chickasaw Country Club. Call Michael Jordan, 901-647-3014. Olin, let people know how they can keep up with you, all the great content that you're putting out. You're writing every day, but more than anything, I think you're explaining what is going on in College Station better than anyone I've heard.
Well, thank you so much. We'd appreciate if you give us a look at TexAgs.com. That's just an abbreviated version of Texas Aggies, TexAgs.com. You can follow TexAgs on Twitter at that same handle, TexAgs. And if you're so inclined, I'd appreciate if you'd follow me on Twitter too. Just all you got to do is spell my name, and it's right there at the bottom of the screen. So if you can spell that name, you can follow me because I don't hide behind any handles or any pseudonyms.
Yeah, I mean, I don't either. I'm at Sidelines_live. I'm with you. Everybody knows who we are. But Olin, look forward to the next visit. Thanks so much. And again, to everybody out there, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow.